In this lesson, you're going to learn what CSS is, how to write it, and how to use it along HTML to style web pages. Now that you've got a good grasp on HTML, let's level up our game and learn CSS. CSS is a styling language that can't be used on its own. It requires HTML in order to work. CSS enables all the pretty fonts, beautiful colors, and other non-standard design elements on our web page. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it is a style sheet language used to describe the way in which HTML is presented to the user. CSS can either be linked using an external sheet or written within the HTML document itself. We'll explore both options throughout this course. CSS is made up of selectors and rules. Selectors are indicators that tell the computer which elements to apply the desired styles to, and the rules are those styles. Each CSS rule starts with at least one, but possibly more than one selector. These can select either a type of element such as an H1, P, or image, or a specific class of element, or the ID of a singular element. Both classes and IDs can be added to any HTML element and accessed by CSS. But whereas classes can be added to multiple elements to carry across a consistent set of styles, IDs are meant to be unique to only one element. Depending on your goal, you may want to use one or the other, or both. Class selectors are written in CSS by prepending the name of the class, which you choose yourself, with a dot. IDs are written in almost the same way, but instead of a dot, you use a hash, or a number sign. As you can see, there are multiple ways to select an element using CSS. But how do you know whether or not your rule will be applied correctly? CSS has two features that help with this: Cascade and Specificity. As its name implies, the styles in CSS are applied in a cascading manner. That means that the styles that are written at the top of the file are applied first, and then as you go down, the other styles are applied on top of that. In this case, if you've written two conflicting styles for the same element, the one that applies later in the CSS sheet will be the one that is applied. However, this can get a bit troublesome after a while, especially if you don't know where you've nested this style, so there is a way to override this. Let's take a look at another feature called Specificity. Specificity allows us to override previously stated rules based on how specifically the element is selected. For instance, if all p tags were set to have the color red, but then we give a specific p tag the class of special, and gave that class the rule of color blue, regardless of where that rule is stated in the document, so irrespective of the cascade, that p tag would be forced to take on the color blue, because classes are more specific than element selectors. The same is true for IDs. If we gave that same p tag the ID of unique and set the rule for that ID to be the color green, that p tag would then take on the color green. This is because IDs are the most specific of all three of our selector options. So it goes elements, then classes, then IDs. As you might have already picked up, CSS rules are written using a set of declarations that levy the use of properties and values. The property on the left side of the declaration is the stylistic feature that we want to modify with our rule. The value on the right side is the specific style choice we've made. When we combine the property and the value, we get a CSS declaration. These declarations will live inside our CSS rule sets or rules and will then be applied to our HTML. As you can imagine, CSS has hundreds of different properties, but don't worry, you're not meant to memorize all of them. You can use sites like W3 Schools, Mozilla Developer Docs, and Stack Overflow to look them up whenever you need them. Each property can also have many different types of values, which need to be spelled correctly or written in the right order for them to work. So if you're ever unsure about the property or styling you're working with, it's best practice to just look up the documentation.